When people make fun of Christians, they actually don't know who they're making fun of. It is the most diverse movement in all of human history, but I think in order to be able to see it, you maybe got to zoom up one notch. Yeah. And when you're willing to zoom up one notch, all of a sudden, being able to kind of lean into your culture becomes it becomes a little bit less of a taboo thing to do. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Makes complete sense.
So I think it's true. I think people see that it's true. I think people strategize around knowing that it's true. Okay, they do their worship a certain way.
Yeah.
They communicate with their congregation a certain way. They advertise themselves a certain way. Okay, so we're all doing the pragmatic thing. Every single church is doing it. Some people do it well. And the only difference is if you feel icky about it or you don't feel icky about it.
And that's the thing that allows people to go all the way in on it.
Yes.
Or they tend to skirt around it a little bit.
It's very much like the growth conversation, and we've talked about this a lot. Man, if you have a divided heart, you can't go all the way in.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing here, man. If you start feeling some type of way about trying to name who your church is most suited to go after, and actually draw a picture of them in your mind of who that person is, if you can't do that on the front end, you will not be able to lean all the way into this whole thing about, man, who God is wiring up your church to be. And so we want to try to take the air out of that balloon a little bit here, you know?
This is Breaking Barriers, where we help pastors and churches grow so that they can go.
All right. Hey, guys, welcome back to the Breaking Barriers podcast. My name is Pastor Andrew Hopper, and I'm here today with the white rhino himself. Albino rhino.
Yeah, it's different.
The albino rhino, Jonathan Yarborough. Man, today we're going to get into some stuff that we talked about a little bit at the Breaking Barriers conference. We didn't have time to go all the way in this. I could feel in the room as I began to talk about it, two simultaneous emotions people were having, okay?
All right.
Number one, they were totally drawn into what I was saying because I think there is an intuitive nature of it that you're just like, man, that's true.
Okay.
And the other part of it is it sort of swims against the current of where we've been missiologically for the last 20 years or whatever, and people are like, man, I don't know that I like that.
Yeah. And
of course, what I'm getting into today is your church has a brand.
Uh-oh.
Your church has a brand, man. There's a bunch of them that we're going to name. We're going to talk about some of them today. Here's the issue. Every church has a brand, but not every church is willing to own it and to live into it. And when you're reluctant to name it, to live into it, you will lose the power of it. I wanted to start with you, Yarborough. You had a very unique experience over the last couple of weeks that we were talking about today of seeing a very positive example of what it looks like to do your brand well. People think your brand is dependent on context. That is not true.
Yeah.
You can do any brand just about in any context.
Yeah.
What you got a chance to see with Collide Church in Yadkin County is a little bit of a big box brand, ascending brand, not just some modern brand, not dissimilar from us in a very rural place, but they know who they are. They know what they're trying to do. They've contextualized it well for that community, and they're pulling it off. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of times when people say they want to contextualize that, what they mean is they can't do that kind of church. Like they couldn't do big box church in this kind of place because the context wouldn't allow it.
Right.
But, Nick Poindexter, who planted Collide Church down in Yadkinville, I think it's 10 years ago, he understands the people of Yadkin County because he's from there. Mm-hmm. So he gets them. He is one of them. So in a lot of ways, it's like, hey, I'm going to plant a church that's for people that are like me. Mm-hmm. So when he understands that and he gets, okay, I'm in a rural context. And so that means that the people that are coming in here they're not going to look like people that are in a big city. They're not going to have the same kind of interest. They're not going to be thinking about the same kinds of things that big city folks are thinking about. It also means they're going to be blue collar folks that are living in that county. And so he's going to make sure that he talks about things in a way that blue collar people can relate to. For example, so I had been working on the sermon that I was going to preach there. And I had all these examples that were in there about, the things that we're chasing after. And it was stuff like, bigger bank accounts and looking for the next investment opportunity and that kind of stuff. And when I found out from Nick that they had a blue collar church and what the people there were like, those things that we were chasing shifted to being like the bigger truck and the bigger gun safe.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
Which probably really connected.
Yeah.
But the point is, You did not you, because you didn't plant the church. You did a good job with this with him. But Nick has not confused the contextualization conversation with the brand conversation.
That's right.
He has he has understood, this is my brand. This is the type of church we're going to run. And it's going to have, what does that mean? The trappings are going to be, there's going to be a certain type of music. We're going to be excited about multiplying services. We're going to be all about sending. We're going to do X, Y, Z. It's going to have a feel, a direction. Then we're going to contextualize the language and things that we use around that. But it does have a brand. And one of the things that I feel like, I have a suspicion about why this is. I think it's because of how deeply entrenched the diversity kind of conversation has gotten in the church at large in terms of our stream of church. I think that has something to do with it. But whenever we even begin to bring up brand of a church, I can feel walls just going up everywhere, because it's like, oh my gosh, we're going back to homogeneous principle, and it's only about reaching the people that, look like you and act like you and all that kind of stuff. It's actually not what we're saying. What we are saying, though, is that there are particular leanings that people have that are going to make them more attracted to certain types of churches. And those certain types of churches, I think, would do well to lean into those things for the sake of reaching the demographic that they feel like are going to naturally be inclined to come to their church. People don't like that. They want to act like every type of person is going to want to be involved in every type of church. And that is just not true. And you see it all around with these different brands. Man, why do you think, you've been around the game longer than I have, why do you think right now, when I begin to talk about, and sometimes it's even just the phrasing of brand, I'm really doing that to try to catch catch attention a little bit, but the idea of like, man, you have a certain ministry philosophy that it's packaged in a way that comes off, and you can categorize them. Mm-hmm. Big box is a brand. Diversity is a brand. I know people aren't going to like to hear that, but that is true. Helping the poor, House of Refuge, that's a brand. Right. Why do you think people might simultaneously say, okay, that is true. Look at how churches operate and look at how they run. Yeah. That is true what you're saying, but I don't like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't want, and I certainly, God forbid, am not going to lean into it, and create an avatar of the type of person that I think will come to my church and try to go after them, because that would be anathema. Why do you think that is?
And I think the biggest hurdle to that, I don't maybe hurdle isn't the best word. When I hear these kinds of conversations, I think what people go to most often is, hey, that's not what heaven is going to look like. Heaven is going to be all people gathered together. And so people think we should try to create some sort of environment that looks more like what heaven will look like. Right. I think that's some of what's going on in their heads.
And in that, they fail to take the next logical step. Just a question: will there be multiple expressions of worship in heaven?
Yeah.
Will there or not?
Yeah.
I think there will be myriads of expressions of worship in heaven that are heart cry from people's culture. I think that's what we're going to find in heaven. I don't have a proof text for that, but I just think, like, man, to assume that that's not going to be true. Certainly there is a myriad of multitude, and we're all worshiping, in Revelation 5, Revelation 7. I would say that's true on earth right now. Okay. You look at, when you look at just the average Sunday morning, if you're willing to zoom up one level from local church to regional church, what do you find? Man, you find the most diverse movement in the history of all humanity. Rebecca McLaughlin points this out. When people make fun of Christians, they actually don't know who they're making fun of. They're more likely than not, they're making fun of someone of African descent. Yeah. Or they're making fun of someone now with the most rapid church growth movement in places like China and that kind of thing. It's not just this pasty white European. That's not who the majority of Christians in the world are anymore. It is the most diverse movement in all of human history. But I think in order to be able to see it, you maybe got to zoom up one notch. Yep. And when you're willing to zoom up one notch, all of a sudden, being able to kind of lean into your culture becomes it becomes a little bit less of a taboo thing to do. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Makes complete sense.
So I think that where we're at right now is I think it's true. I think people see that it's true. I think people strategize around knowing that it's true. Okay. They do their worship a certain way.
Yeah.
They communicate with their congregation a certain way. They advertise themselves a certain way. Okay. So we're all doing the pragmatic thing. Every single church is doing it. Some people do it well. And the only difference is if you feel icky about it or you don't feel icky about it.
And that's the thing that allows people to go all the way in on it.
Yes.
Or they tend to skirt around it a little bit.
It's very much like the growth conversation, and we've talked about this a lot. Man, if you have a divided heart, you can't go all the way in.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing here, man. If you start feeling some type of way about trying to name who your church is most suited to go after, and actually draw a picture of them in your mind of who that person is, if you can't do that on the front end, you will not be able to lean all the way into this whole thing about, man, who God is wiring up your church to be. And so we want to try to take the air out of that balloon a little bit here, you know?
And I remember even going all the way back to like when I was getting ready to plant a church, going through the whole boot camp thing and all that stuff. And they would tell us, hey, you're going to attract a certain kind of person to your church. And it's probably going to be somebody that looks kind of like you, and your church is going to be naturally set up for those kinds of people because it's going to be the kind of church you want to go to.
Yeah.
Right. So you start crafting an environment like that. I mean, they used to say things, you know, like, hey, it's going to be people that are this much older than you and this many years younger than you. It's going to be people that are in the same kind of like demographic area that you are when it comes to like economics and that kind of stuff. That's just going to be the kind of people that are going to come to your church. And so you ought to just go ahead and lean into that. You're not going to be able to get people that are, I mean, you're going to get some, but the vast majority of the people aren't going to be that. The crazy thing is we hear that, and then it was like everybody was just going as hard as they could to not be that.
The opposite way, Well, and I think what you're saying is exactly right. Most naturally, that's who your church is going to attract. If you feel a missionary call, right, to do something different,
and you can grow cross-cultural.
That's right. I think you can do that, but not without an incredible amount of intentionality. Yeah. And how can you have that intentionality if you're worried about you can't even create an avatar of who you think is going to come, right? Or what you want, or who you want to come. So, man, I think people could create churches that are going to reach all types of different demographics if they're intentional enough about it, but they're probably not going to do it totally simultaneously, right? What they're going to have to do is they're going to have to say, man, this is the demographic in some ways that we're going after. We're going to brand around, we're going to contextualize around, we're going to set this up to where I feel like I can do this well. Number one, that's more the branding thing. That's what Nick's doing. Yeah. Okay, rural community, you're doing big box, but it's like, man, I can do this well.
Right.
Then you contextualize it, I think. Now, you brought this up. I think it's worth just mentioning. I said, hey, you're already doing this. Every church is already doing this. Some just don't want to do it well because they feel icky about it, but you are already doing this. And you said the phrase, and I just want to reiterate it because it's just true. You know what your brand is by who you're already attracting.
Right.
In a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
The people that are coming to whatever it is that you're putting on, they are the reflection of the people who are hungry for the recipe that you're cooking up. Right?
Yep.
And whatever recipe that is, that's the type of person that's going to come to it. Now you say, well, what is the recipe? And this is how I make up a brand or a recipe or whatever language you want to use. It's nothing short of every single thing that you do, if this makes sense. Okay.
Say more to that.
It's every single thing that goes into making your church what it is. Okay. It's the preaching, the style of it.
Okay.
It's the way the building looks. It's the colors that you use.
Yeah.
It's the choices of songs that you have. It's the age of the people on stage. It's the feel. It's the smell. It's the location.
Yeah.
I mean, it's every single thing that your church is. You put all that stuff in a blender, you blend it up real good, and you serve it up in a smoothie. And the people that come running, that's who tells you who the brand is.
And I can just hear it right now. People listening to this going, man, they're talking about creating a certain smell.
That's actually true. Those guys over at Two Cities, they're really into the smell thing with your lobby.
Let me ask you this. Yeah. So just a little bit of dialogue around this. Back in the old days, a term came out that I think people might confuse with what we're talking about here. and that is the Saddleback Sam character.
Right.
So how is what we're talking about like that, and maybe not like that?
Well, I think that I think it's like it a lot, and I think that there people want to take punching bag, take shots at it and all that kind of stuff. One way that it may not be like that is one thing I'm saying is one way to look at it is to see who's already coming, rather than just creating an avatar in your mind that you want to go after. Instead of that, you sort of see who is coming to the recipe that is already getting served up.
Yeah.
And then I think what you can do is you have the opportunity to, it all starts with mindset. Once you can just acknowledge that not everybody in your city wants to come to your church.
Yeah.
As bad as you want the diversity of the city, they don't want to come.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There are socioeconomic factors in that.
Yeah.
There are cultural background factors in that. Rural, city, different racial things, languages. I mean, you can say it like this. Most cultural backgrounds do not want to come to your church.
Right.
Most cities are incredibly diverse. There's got to be 100 languages spoken in Greensboro.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Like most people are not going to come to your church in terms of the background that they're coming from, the socioeconomic thing that they're, background that they have. I mean, just all that stuff. But there is a slice of the demographic that wants to come. And whoever that is, I think that you have a really good opportunity to sort of double down and begin to serve things up that will make other people that are like them want to come in. But it only works if you work it, man. It only works if you're if you're able to kind of say out loud without feeling icky, hey, this is the type of church that reaches a certain type of people, and these are the people that are coming to our church. And are probably going to come to our church.
Hey, can we talk just a little bit about what that process was like for us? Like how it was, how did we come about realizing, okay, who are the people that naturally want to come to Mercy Hill? Who are the people that we're attracting? How do we sort of create that avatar of what the person looks like?
Well, I think that we, number one, I've said this 10 times already in this podcast. Every church is already doing this. Because you make decisions around strategy, and every decision attracts some people and excludes some people, and that is just a fact. So we did not have Mercy Hill, Marcy. I don't know what's a man's name with an M. Marciano. Okay, Mark. We did not have a Mercy Hill Mark. Okay, but. And every church, First Baptist, whatever, doesn't have a First Baptist, Frank. Yeah.
I can go all day.
But they actually do have it. They all have it.
Yeah.
And that's my point. So we did not have this on the front end. What we did was we did ministry right until COVID. So from 2012 to 2020, we did ministry without any kind of thought to this stuff. But we were doing it. Why? Because I'm a human, I'm making decisions. You're a human, you're making decisions. We are making decisions, whether salt, pepper, lemon, whatever is going in that recipe.
We just didn't have a name for it.
We didn't have a name for it. But every time we decide this many services, this song we're going to do, every time I do an illustration in a sermon.
Yep.
If I'm going to do an illustration about football and hog hunting, you don't think that immediately there's some good old boys that come running and other people are kind of...
That's right.
And so you're just naturally doing it. And then I'll let you talk about this. Then we went to
it was crazy.
We went to the conference.
Yeah, we're all in this van driving down, and none of us really knew exactly what the conference was about. But Bobby had found this conference that was down at Seacoast Church, so we're all headed down there to like the Charleston area. This long drive, and Bobby just has his foot on the gas the whole time. He's just rolling. But we get there, and this conference is like about online church or something like that, which at that point we had pretty much decided, well, we're not going to do that.
Right.
So we're at a conference that's about the thing that we had just decided we weren't going to do. But while we were there, we met this guy that was at the conference. I think he was there to like do some consulting or something like. He didn't have a group from his church there. But he was from that church Crossroads up in Cincinnati. We went out and threw some axes with him that night and started asking him a whole bunch of questions. And what he did at Crossroads was he did a lot of the marketing stuff that they had up there. And he started talking to us about, hey, who is it that your church reaches? And he really pressed us. I mean, not just to say, where we had talked about people that had been inoculated with the gospel. We had that kind of language early on. Mm-hmm. But he pressed us to go further than that. you know,
Yeah.
and to really get into it.
Right.
And so you remember what some of that stuff was?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that very clearly because what's funny is it doesn't take long to start putting language to this because you already know it.
Yeah.
They're evident. They drip from your, I don't care if your church is 50 people in a rural community, 500 people in Charlotte, your church drips with the example of the people who like your church.
Yeah.
Right?
You just what the difficulty is, even though you know it, you just got to kind of,
you got to buy, you got to eat the whole sandwich. None of us even wanted to do it.
Right.
And I think the reason is because you think in naming it, you're excluding people, which is really not true.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of people that do not fit this that are in your church, and which is awesome. You know, there's going to be people that are attracted to your church different, but I don't care what church it is, you are going to find common threads of generally speaking, the types of people that want to go there. We figured out pretty fast, and I mean, this stuff just started flowing once we started talking about it. Man, Mercy Hill is going to reach people that have a blue collar heart but a white collar job.
Yeah. And we started talking about first generation.
Yeah, they we're going to reach the type of dude that goes to work as an eye doctor every day and spits a dip on his way home.
Yeah. And drives a pickup truck.
And definitely drives a 4-wheel drive.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, may not get it very dirty during the year, in all seriousness, but he's going to drive it. These are people that are first generation college educated.
Yeah.
All right, so they're grappling with new levels of economic success. They're trying to figure out what this means for their kids. They're very concerned with translating conservative theology and even maybe conservative values to their kids in a crazy world. And so they're constantly trying to figure out here's where they're at. Do I shield them or do I try to engage this crazy world with them?
Yeah.
This world is bat crazy, and I don't know how much I should be trying to shield them or try to engage with them.
They're also leaders. They're already leaders.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're leaders, and they feel this itch and this ache that their parents maybe didn't feel. For a lot of them, their parents were trying to figure out how to make it.
Yeah.
But these people, because of the hard work of their parents, making it day to day, or week to week, is maybe not the worry. And they've been freed up a little bit to think about, man, why am I actually here?
Yeah.
God, you've blessed me in these ways. You've set me up to own this business. You've set me up to get a master's degree here. Okay, I know I'm made for more than possessions and promotions. My kids are made for more than straight A's in soccer.
Dude, I was just getting ready to ask you for the line.
How do I leverage? Yeah. I'm made for more, but what does that look like? Yeah. That paragraph that me and you just described,
right?
That's not every single person at Mercy Hill.
But it's a whole bunch of them.
It's a whole bunch of them, man. Yeah. And what's funny is, this is what's funny. People think that that in naming that, you're going anti-diversity. But the reality is, there's a lot of diversity expressed within what I just said.
Sure there is. Yep.
In all types of age, race, different parts of the country where you're from, single, married. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that can be there, but there's a lot of commonality in terms of what is sort of binding people here. And so I think until people can just get freed up to be able to say, this is who we're going after, we think this brand is going to help with that. This contextualization is going to help with that. Man, until you can get to the place where you say those things out loud, I think you're just going to have a hard time. You're going to have a brand. People are going to come to it, but you're not going to do it intentionally, and you're not going to get the power that you could out of it.
Hey, what do you think about talking about maybe what some of the other brands are?
Yeah, so let's do that. Let's finish with that.
Okay.
So I think that we could do a lot around this, but I've just categorized a few of the brands that I see in our community in the Triad. Triad's 1 million people,
and this certainly isn't all of them.
No, this is not all of them, but I think there are some here that is worth talking about. And so let's just dive into some of these brands. And here's the thing: we've seen these brands work in all different types of. It's like they'll work if you work it. I mean, it rises and falls on leadership. It's not just the one type of church.
That's right.
It just rises and falls on who's in the head chair and who's at who are the leaders, I should say, and how are they leading. So, I think some common brands that attract different people that are attracted to that brand are going to be, number one, I wrote down small town.
All right. So talk about what does that mean? And maybe give an example of a church that we know of that's doing that.
Small town, to me, small town means we are going to, whether we're in a big area or a small area, we are going to own a smaller geographic region.
Okay.
That's what I mean by it.
Okay.
So small town means, hey, dude, that local elementary school is ours.
Okay.
The local fire department in our rural kind of county, they do a marathon every year. We're there.
Okay.
We're going to do that. We're going to make sure that we have the trunk or treat for the whole community. That's going to be right here. We're going to do that really, really well. Man, the Awanas program is going to be bang up, and it's going to be here. A little bit bridges over with traditional, but it doesn't have to. I mean, you can have modern service or whatever and still kind of have a little bit of that small town idea.
It's the point is it's tied to a geographic area.
Yes.
Tied to the community in that area.
This is the opposite of a regional church.
Yeah, okay.
They're not looking for people to drive in from 40 minutes away. Man, we know every neighborhood in this region that we are right here in this municipality. I think, to me, a really good example of this right where we live is Pastor Kelly Bullard with First Baptist Church Summerfield. Man, the church is growing.
Yeah.
I've talked to him occasionally. They're just, I don't know, they just do this well. Like if you look at the local newspaper, our local Northwest Observer newspaper, that's just the northwest part of Guilford County. There's constantly things that are tied to First Baptist Summerfield that are in that because of how well they serve the community, because of how they want to invite that particular community in. Man, they're their age-based ministry guy, he is going to be at Summerfield Recreational Facility for the ball games 2-3 nights a week.
Yeah.
He knows where the community is. He knows where they're going to be. That's where he's going to be. I think they do this really well.
So where we're more of like the regional kind of thing, where we're attracting people from Summerfield, the exact same town where First Baptist Summerfield is, right? So we're getting people from there. The difference would be that Kelly's saying, hey, we're going after Summerfield.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, is that the brand is really going to kind of out itself by who's coming. We attract people from Summerfield. Do you know who we don't attract much of? People that are from Summerfield.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Summerfield has an old community, and it has a booming new community of people from Ohio. Okay?
Yeah.
That's who we're going to reach. Now, I'm not saying totally. I mean, we've got some old Summerfield families and stuff, but generally speaking, the people that are from there, born and raised there, man, this is my community from man, Granny lives here, all that. They're going to go to First Summerfield all day long over us.
Yeah.
Because what they see is this church is for us. They're rooted in the community. I just think that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, you got the same people coming from the same place. They are choosing two different brands. Summerfield's cooking up a recipe. Mercy Hill's cooking up a recipe. Some people drive by there to get here. Some people are going to go back by here to get there.
Yeah.
And it's because of the brand.
All right. What's the next one?
The next one I would say, we don't have to spend much time on this, is traditional. I would just say, man, this is a church that is going to work the traditional angle. Yes, I'm talking suits and choir and all that kind of stuff. But more than that, what I would say is I'm talking about programmatic discipleship.
Awana, stuff like
this
that.
This is the church that does upward.
Yeah, okay.
But they do it incredibly well.
Yeah.
It's not crappy. It's, I think about one church, Matt Smith and those guys.
Yeah.
Their upward program is probably I bet it's the largest. I mean, I could be just speaking out. I bet it's one of, if not the largest, like youth sports organization on that entire side of Greensboro. I mean, it would be bigger than any YMCA, any kind of all volunteer run. These guys are crushing it. They're sharing the gospel. They're using very traditional methods of programmatic discipleship.
So that's Lebanon.
That's Lebanon. Yep.
That's Lebanon. And they've even jumped into like this whole camping ministry that's similar to the upward thing. So highly programmatic, but they're using all of that to reach people, and they're doing it exceptionally well.
Yeah, so I would say another one is, just for sake of time here, is big box. I'd put us sort of in this camp. I would put us in big box sending.
Yeah.
You could have big box growth. You could have big box other stuff. But by big box, what I just mean is, man, this is just what you would think. I mean, it's a bit of a chain.
Yeah.
It is, man, we're gonna, there's the warehouse. We're gonna plant. There's so many things that are similar with these churches. None of them have discipleship space.
Yeah.
They're all gonna be groups led.
Yeah.
They're gonna be they're gonna be very modern, man. They're gonna be very elder driven. They're gonna be a lot of Hillsong worship and whatever's on the top 40. They're just the big box. I mean, is what it is. Local craft people are not gonna like it.
Right.
They're not gonna like that.
Yeah.
People that want to drink a craft beer, or they want to go to a very local, there's only one restaurant, they're not gonna like that. But the masses still go to Texas Roadhouse.
Right.
As you know.
That's right.
Because
they're awesome.
They have the double chili as a side.
That's right.
That's right. That's really what it is.
And it's the most diverse place in Greensboro.
It is, which is pretty interesting. But there's gonna be people that are drawn to that. Like, hey, I love the efficiency of the big box. Mm-hmm. I love the way kids check-in is. I love they're just that's what they love. So I think we're probably an example of that. A couple more here. 9 Marks, I think is just kind of a brand. And they've been working that for whatever, 20 or 30 years, and it's just a real brand, especially within the SBC. You're going to have high fidelity to the teaching ministry, high emphasis on membership. Things are going to move slower. Yeah. That kind of idea. A lot of times you're going to see a very high commitment to single service, to maybe not totally non-multi-site, but certainly no video preaching. Right. But they're going to have, they're just, it's a brand. I mean, it just is. I mean, this is funny to me. I took my daughter to a camp this summer. Yeah. And I met a guy, awesome guy, man. Met this awesome guy. He had an awesome daughter. Like, we got a chance to talk. I kid you not, within 10 minutes of meeting this guy, I knew.
He was a 9 Marks guy.
He was a 9 Marks guy. And I mean, man, never said it. Never said, but I could just tell. We started talking about missions, the way he thought about missions. Yeah. We were talking about church, the way he described his fellowship and their covenant membership. When that word comes up within like 1 minute,
that's that was
you just know. Yeah. And I'm like, man, this guy. I could serve up my recipe, but you know what? He's going to drive past that to go to that recipe. He's wired that way. Mm-hmm. He's wired that way. There's something in his strengths finders metrics. There's something in his gifting that makes him more comfortable in a situation like that, which is awesome. And it's like, hey man, find your brand, lean into it. I said this earlier. I know we got to keep moving here. I said this earlier that I think can ruffle some people, but diversity is a brand.
Yeah,
because it's a bit of a facade. All right. What I mean by that is, when people begin to say, man, we want our church to reflect the city, they don't actually think about what that means when you're talking about a city who has 100 languages represented. Mm. You understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
So no matter the most diverse church you've ever seen in your life is still the slightest microcosm. I mean, it is a tiny slice of the actual diversity that is in a city.
That's right.
Normally when people say we want to be diverse, they just mean we don't want to all be white.
Yeah.
Right, is generally...
It's not like you've got services going on with 100 different languages.
Yeah, or even for 100 different... Even if they're all in English, they're intentionally designed. Yeah. I mean, nobody, to reach all these different cultural backgrounds. The world, and this is by God's design, I think this is why there's going to be such a myriad of worship expressions in heaven. The world is so much more diverse in actuality than the way that we talk about it on the conference circuit.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we talk about diversity as if, man, if you just have a percentage of non-white people, then you're... And it's like, dude, the actual diversity in your city. But diversity is also a brand. Yeah. So when people go hard, the mosaics of the world, when they go... and there's some churches like this in Greensboro too. When they go really hard on the diversity thing, you know who they end up attracting? People who love to talk about diversity.
Yeah.
That's who they end up attracting. And it's just the reality of it. I would say another one is hospital for the hurting. This is kind of the refuge type idea. Yeah. They attract people that are hurting. They also attract people that want to help the people that are hurting.
They're probably going to do things like celebrate recovery.
Yeah, for sure.
They're going to do things like soup kitchens for people.
Yep. They're going to do church at the bridge, under the bridge on a Saturday night. And then I would say, you have all these different expressions of cultural background. Like, you just have black church, or you have like churches that have a Korean bent to them, where they're just like, that is what they are. They play all the way into that. I would just say, as we kind of wrap this up, the biggest thing I think that we wanted to try to get across today is, and we could do 100 more brands, right?
Sure.
The thing we want to say today is, man, there is power, I think, in seeing the recipe that you can best serve up and going after that.
Yeah.
And I don't think you got to feel icky about it. And I do know that some of the church growth stuff with the homogeneous principle, when you go back in the literature, can feel kind of icky to people. But every church is doing this. Some do it really well. Every church is making decisions that include some and exclude some. You just do.
Yeah.
So you might as well think about it a little bit and try to do it in a strategic way. I'll give you the last word.
Well, I was actually just going to fire another question.
Oh man, okay.
I just had this thought.
Yeah.
So we're talking about this obviously in like American culture.
Yep.
So when you start thinking about this in a non-American culture, like an international context, do you think this plays at all? Or do you think that maybe this begins to unravel in those different cultures?
I don't think it unravels at all. The only thing I would say, from based on where I've been in the world, the only thing I would say about that is if I was talking to somebody who was in a true pioneering context, I would almost say, hey man, I don't feel like I can speak to that.
Yeah.
But places that I've been in the world like Peru or the Dominican Republic, even places I've been in the world that are across, I've been to Indonesia, I've been to Thailand, I've been to different places. If there was much of a reached population there, I feel like what I'm saying absolutely comes to play. And I mean, it's just true, man. Like I've talked to our missionaries in South Asia, and it's so funny. Places where the faith has kind of taken root and taken off for a few decades, there are just absolutely churches that do a better job at reaching people that are in a higher class.
Yeah.
And churches that do better reaching others in a lower class. I mean, so I think that what we're saying is right. Every church is serving up a recipe. Hey guys, man, we want to go ahead and get out of here with this one. Check out our private Facebook group. That's the best place to engage with us and be able to throw out ideas and see people kind of start pinging stuff back and forth. So if you're into this kind of content and you want to see your church grow so that it can go, then you can check that out. We'll see you next time.